What's going on, Buckeye Nation? Here we are for the Columbus Wired Quick Hit pregame preview. I'm Andy Evans, and it is Game 9 of the 2024 season for today's matchup between the second-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, who come into this one at 7-1 overall, 4-1 in the Big Ten, hosting the mighty 1-7 Purdue Boilermakers, who are currently winless at 0-5 in the Big Ten Conference. Now, the Buckeyes, overall, let's get into a little history first. They lead this series by a pretty healthy margin, 41-15, with two ties between the two teams. However, in the last 20 years, Ohio State has a slim 6-4 margin over the Boilermakers. However, all of those 4 wins for Purdue have happened in West Lafayette, and the last time that they came into the Horseshoe and pulled out a win, you'd have to go all the way back to John Cooper's first year as head coach in 1988, when the Boilermakers came here to Columbus and walked out with a 31-26 victory. Now, what do we know, though, about today's Boilermakers taking on today's Ohio State Buckeyes? Well, as I said, the Boilermakers are 1-7. Their only win so far this season came in their season opener against Indiana State. So their one win is against an FCS team. And like I said, they're 0-5 in the Big Ten, and they are the only conference team yet to notch a conference victory. It's been a mishmash of misfortune for the Boilermakers so far this season. They got trounced by Notre Dame at home, like 66-7. They got worked by Wisconsin on the road. They were shut out by Oregon, 35-0 in West Lafayette. However, 2 of their losses this year have come in overtime. They took on Illinois on the road and lost by a final score of 50-49. And that was a game where Purdue was actually down 24-3 at the half and scored 40 second half points, to take it into overtime. However, they weren't able to pull out the win. And then last weekend at home against the Northwestern Wildcats, they lost in overtime by a final score of 26-20. in a game where they were unable to notch a single point in overtime, and Northwestern got their touchdown, and that was the ball game. Right now, Purdue, a 1-7 record. Statistically, they're not a very good team, and sometimes stats lie. However, in this instance, you take a look at Purdue's stats, and I think they're pretty apropos as to why they're a 1-7 team right now. They rank 16th in passing yards in the Big Ten. 16 out of 18 teams. Right now they have a total of 1,486 passing yards on the season. Will Howard himself has over 1,700 yards for the Buckeyes. Boilermakers are led by quarterback Hudson Card. Yeah, the Hudson Card that was down in Texas and was going to battle it out with Quinn Ewers. Well, he decided to jump ship, head to West Lafayette. He's had an okay season. I mean, he's 1,005 passing yards on the year, 8 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. Not a great. I mean, he's thrown half as many picks as he's thrown touchdowns. He's barely over 1,000 yards. He has missed 2 games this season, though, including that home loss to Oregon. He also missed their game against Illinois, where they almost won due to concussions, and that brought in backup Ryan Brown. Right now, the Boilermakers on the ground, 12th in the Big Ten at 1,192 yards, led by running backs Devin Mukobi, I hope I said that right, Devin Mukobi and Reggie Love III. Mukobi leads the team right now, 562 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Love has piled up 339 and 2 scores on the ground. Now, the Boilermakers do come in with 8 total rushing touchdowns on the year. That's next to last in the conference to UCLA, who I believe has only 3 rushing touchdowns. So Boilermakers, though, haven't necessarily been overly productive on the ground, nor very productive through the air. And on the other side of the ball, their best ranking, Purdue's best ranking overall in the entire country, is 103rd in all of the major categories, and that is in passing yards allowed. They do allow 245 yards, though, through the air per game, and their run defense is 121st out of 134 FBS teams at 203 yards per game. And their red zone defense has not been spectacular. Usually when people get in, they score, and in fact, their red zone allows 90% of the time that people get in, do people score, and that might bode well for an OSU offense that currently ranks 5th in the nation in the red zone, scoring 96% of the time. However, Purdue, they are top 25 in the country in one stat, so they got this going for them, which is nice. Yes. They're 24th in the country in net punting average at 41.8 yards a punt. So I guess if you're going to do something, you might as well do it right. And so they do have a nice punter that can at least get some good yardage down the field. And hopefully he's going to pin this OSU offense deep. An OSU offense led by Will Howard that, like I said, has over 1,700 yards in the country. 18 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. Yeah, he had a pick 6 last week. He had kind of he had a weird game last week, right, folks? I mean, he had monumental highlights, monumental lowlights. The pick 6 was one of them on his first pass of the game. Yeah, he had the fumble at the goal line, but he also came through with some great runs, had a nice pinpoint pass to Emeka Ibuka for their first score of the game, and then that touchdown pass to Brandon Inniss, which I love the play call by Chip Kelly, by the way, on that touchdown pass last weekend against the Nittany Lions. He had Brandon Inniss, Jaden Ballard, and Bryson Rogers on the field. He had his second team wide receivers on the field for that touchdown. So Chip Kelly really pulled out some new fancy wrinkles that I really enjoyed seeing, and to get that win last week in Happy Valley, he kind of had to do that. Jim Knowles also called a fabulous game as far as I was concerned. Of course, the defense didn't allow a touchdown, 2 field goals against the Nittany Lions last weekend. So both Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles just called a hell of a game apiece. Are we going to see that today? I don't think so. I don't think so, and I'll get into that in a second. But really, what I think Buckeye Nation is going to be keying on, the story for today's game, true freshman wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. Now, Jeremiah Smith, first game last weekend that he did not catch a touchdown, but he still became the all-time receiver, the all-time single-season yardage receiver for a true freshman in last weekend's game against the Nittany Lions. He now has a total of 678, surpassing Chris Carter's 648, and all Jeremiah needs, because he's tied with Chris Carter in touchdown receptions with 8. All he needs is one touchdown catch today to have the single-season true freshman receiving touchdown record, and then all he needs are 3 catches to surpass Chris Carter to then own the yardage, touchdown, and receptions record in a single season for a true freshman. So 3 catches, one of them for a touchdown today for Jeremiah Smith. I think that's going to happen. So I think we're going to see history being made here against the Boilermakers. However, couple of guys here, okay, to keep your eye on for Purdue. They do have some guys who can play some defense. I know that the scores don't necessarily say it, but I want you all to keep your eyes on linebacker Kydron. Once again, I hope I said it right. Kydron Jenkins, who leads the team with 8.5 tackles for loss, including 5.5 sacks. Sophomore defensive end Will Helt, who has 7.5 tackles for loss, including 5 sacks. And then there's defensive back Kendrick Breedlove, who leads the team. He's been a ball hawk for him. Leads the team with 3 picks and 4 pass breakups. So linebacker Kydron Jenkins, defensive end Will Help, and defensive back Kendrick Breedlove those are the guys to kind of keep your eye on when you see the Buckeyes out playing offense as far as those defensive guys for the Boilermakers. Buckeyes are favored by 37.5 in this game. I saw some people, not many, some people say, could this be a trap game? No, not a trap game in the sense of losing. I mean, hey, any given Saturday, anything can happen. I don't think that's going to happen today. However, I don't think that we are going to see Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles call some of the unique plays that they were calling last weekend against Penn State. I don't think we're going to see that today. I think that they're going to play close to the vest, and I think that Ohio State, though, just because of talent alone, they're going to be able to get the job done on both sides of the ball, but just don't expect anything, I think, too overly fancy. You might see a safety blitz here and, one or two maybe the entire game from Jim Knowles. Maybe he mixes it up, throws some stunts in there with the defensive line. Chip Kelly, some of those crazy kind of weird option plays that he was running to Travion Henderson last weekend against Penn State. Even the read option, which I love to see with Will Howard. He was running him a little bit more against the Nittany Lions. Are we going to see that today? I don't think we're going to see too much of Will Howard running the football. I don't think they want to risk getting him hurt. We're now starting to get into this is November football, so I don't think we're going to see him trying to put Will Howard in a position to where Will Howard could potentially injure himself. But 37.5 points, that still seems kind of healthy to me. And pessimistic Peter over here, I have an issue sometimes thinking that Ohio State is going to cover the spread. Even at home, even against a team that's 1-7, I think the Buckeyes are going to come close. And I think, though, that this is going to be a great game. At least I hope so, that this is going to be a great game to see some of those second-team guys get in and get meaningful minutes. I'd love to see some Julian Sayin on a couple of drives in the fourth quarter, even getting Devin Brown in there to get some experience. I mean, they need to get those guys. James Peoples, I'd love to see him get in the fourth quarter. Obviously, the receivers heck, let's get Ennis, Rogers, and Ballard out there early. He did it in the second quarter, Chip did, against the Nittany Lions. Why not do it a little bit more today? I'd love to see some of that. But overall, I don't think we're going to see anything too crazy. But I think the Buckeyes are going to come this close to within covering that 37.5-point spread with a final score of 38-3. So there you have it, folks. That's been the Columbus Wired Quick Hit pregame preview. I appreciate y'all watching, as always, and I'll holler at you guys in the post game. Until then, take care. Enjoy the game. Go Bucks.